In this video, I will be making a vest that's inspired by the Ziggy vest. I really like the design of this top. I just can't afford the nearly $600 price tag. I also decided to make it in all white so that it would be a bit different from the original. You can wear it as a top or with something underneath. For this project, you will need 8-ply cotton yarn and a 3.5mm hook. For this project, the front and back panels will be almost identical except for the neckline. To start, you're going to need to make a slip knot and insert your hook. Then we're going to chain 88. This is the measurement if you're making a small like me, but if you want to make an extra small or a larger size, you would need to adjust your chain length. You can just measure it so that it goes halfway around your waist with a little bit of extra room because this pattern is not going to stretch, or you can measure it up against a top or a vest or a jumper that you already have that you like the fit of. You're just going to need to make sure that the number is divisible by 4 for when we do our next row. Once you've chained 80, you'll need to insert your hook into the second stitch from the hook and we'll do a slip stitch. So just insert your hook, yarn over, pull through everything on your hook. This is going to be so that we can turn around. Then we need to chain 3. After we've done our chain 3, we're going to do a single crochet, but we're going to go all the way around this row of chains. So you're just going to put your hook all the way to the bottom and pull it up and over and do a single crochet. So you're not actually going through any of the stitches in the chain, you're going around the chain. Then we'll need to do another 3 chains and another single crochet. So this is going to be the pattern going all the way back down along our chain row. So 3 chains and then a single crochet, and just keep doing this until you have a total of, there should be 22 gaps. You can see between the first row and the second row there'll be a gap, and you need to have 22 gaps for a small. If you're making a different size, just divide the number of chains that you did by 4 and that's how many gaps you should have. Now that I've got 22 gaps, I'm going to finish off this row by inserting my hook into the last stitch in the first row and doing a single crochet. Then I'm going to chain 3 and turn my work. Next, you're going to need to put 3 double crochets into the gap in between the first row and the second row. This first gap is going to have 3 double crochets because that first chain of 3 counts as our first stitch, but going forward from this, every gap is going to have 4 double crochets. So now place 4 double crochets into each gap going all the way along. So in all 21 remaining gaps, you're going to need to put 4 double crochets all the way to the end. Now that we've reached the end of this row, I'm just going to put 4 double crochets into that last gap. Once you've done that, you're going to need to chain 1 and turn our work. Now we're going to do 3 chains. So 1 chain, 2, 3, and we're going to go back to doing the single crochets around the stitch, but here we're going to go into that gap, and so not into any of the stitches, just between the double crochets. So through the gap and do a single crochet, and then we're going to do 3 more chains, and we're going to go through the gap and do a single crochet. Just continue doing this all the way down until you get to the end. Now that we're at the end, I'm going to do my last 2 single crochet stitches. So you're going to chain up 3 like normal, but this time you're going to go in between the 3rd double crochet and the row of chains just to finish it off. Now we need to do 3 chains and turn our work. Now we're back to what we did the row before, so we're going to do 3 double crochets into this first gap, and then 4 double crochets into every gap after that, going all the way to the end. Now you're just going to keep repeating these rows, so do the row of chains and single crochets and the rows of double crochets. So it depends a bit on how long you want it to be. I made mine fairly cropped, so I did 21 rows in total, or if it's easier, I found it easier to count the double crochet rows, so you need 10 double crochet rows, and then we're going to start decreasing. Now that we've done 10 double crochet rows, we're going to need to leave a bit of room for an armhole. The last row that you should have done would have been a double crochet row, so this row is going to be our chains and single crochet row. To start this row off, we're not going to chain up 1, we're just going to turn our work straight away, and we're going to do slip stitches into the top of the double crochets. So you can see there I'm inserting my hook, and I'm going to do 3 slip stitches into the top of each of those double crochets. Once you've done that, we're going to continue the rest of the row as normal until we get to the end. So chain 3 and then single crochet into the gap until you get to the last group of 4 double crochets. Now that you're almost at the end of this row, you're going to do your second last one as normal, and we're actually going to leave our last one empty. So once you've done this single crochet, we're going to turn around straight away and leave that last one blank. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make a ramp, an angle. So you need to do a slip stitch first, it's the first stitch, and then a single crochet, and then a half double crochet, and then a double crochet. This will make it sort of go up on a slant rather than being a huge step. As you can see there, that combination of stitches makes an angle. Now you're going to continue the rest of the row as normal, so 4 double crochets into every gap except for the last gap in this row. Once you get to the end, you're going to do your 4 double crochets as normal into that second last gap. So if you remember, we did the slip stitches into the very far left stitch, so that doesn't have a gap anymore. So the last gap is actually in that second last lot. So we're just doing our last group of 4 double crochets, and then we're going to do the reverse of what we did at the other end. So we're going to do a double crochet, and then a half double crochet, then a single crochet, and lastly a slip stitch. Now we're not going to do a chain up 1 again, we're just going to turn around straight away. You can see now the angle going down a bit better. So just turn your work, and now we're going to do our slip stitches again. So we're going to do 3 slip stitches into the top of those stitches that we just did. So insert your hook into the top of the stitches and do 3 slip stitches. Once you've done that, we're going to continue the rest of the row as normal. So 3 chains and a single crochet into the gap. And we're going to go all the way until we get to that last stitch again. If you understand the pattern now, you can skip ahead, but I'm going to do it one more time just to make sure that it makes sense. So we're going to do our last 2 of the chain and single crochet stitches, and then we're going to do our group of stitches that slants down when we turn around. So now don't do a chain up, just turn your work and do a slip stitch, a single crochet, a half double crochet, and a double crochet. Now just continue the rest of the row as normal, doing 4 double crochets into every gap except for that last gap where we're going to do the decreasing again. Now we're back at the other end, so we're going to do our last lot of 4 double crochets, and then we're going to do our stitches that slant down. Now we're going to do a double crochet, a half double crochet, a single crochet, and a slip stitch. Once we've turned our work, we're going to need to do our slip stitches again to get us up to that next stitch, and then we're going to continue the rest of the row as normal, doing our 3 chains and single crochet. Now you're just going to continue doing this until you have a big enough gap for your armhole. For me, that was to have 4 slanty rows, or 5 if you're going all the way from the end. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4 plus the end one, and then we're going to start going straight up. Hopefully that makes sense, but if you can see there, if you want to measure it on yourself, you just want to make sure that there's going to be enough room for the front of your armpit or the back, depending on whether you're doing the front or the back. So now that we have finished our slanty row decreases, we're going to chain up 3 and turn our work, and then we're going to go back to what we were doing before with the 3 double crochet into that first gap and then 4 double crochet into every gap after that. So just like that first section of the top. I'll show you the other end as well, even though I'm sure it probably makes sense by now. So now in that last stitch, in that last gap, we're going to do 4 double crochets, and then we're going to do what we were doing before, turn our work, do 3 chain and then our single crochets, and we're going to go straight up, and you're going to need to do 4 more of the double crochet rows. So that after the slanty section there should be 4 rows of double crochet. So now you can see here, I've done my 4 rows of double crochet above the slanty section. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And now we're going to leave a bit of room for our neckline. So you can see I've started doing the 3 chains and single crochet going along, and you're just going to do those first 4 stitches. So you need to measure the middle and then leave 2 stitches on either side of the middle. If you're making a bigger size, you can leave a bigger gap in the middle. It'll be a bit different in numbers, but you want to go about a third of the way. So now we're going to do our slanty decrease row again with a slip stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, and a double crochet. So it's the exact same as what we did before, but we're decreasing it for the neckline now instead of the armpit. Then continue going along the rest of the row with your 4 double crochets. Once you make it to the end, we're going to need to chain up 1 and turn our work like normal. Then we're going to do 3 chains and our single crochet into the gap, going back across until we get to that slanty stitch. Once you've done your last single crochet, we're not going to chain up. We're going to turn our work just like we did before, and we're going to do our slanty row. So slip stitch, single crochet, half double crochet and double crochet. And then we're going to do, in those last 2 gaps, we're going to do our normal double crochet rows. Now that we've reached the end, we're going to chain up 1 and continue as normal until we reach that slanty section again. Once you reach the end, turn your work and do our slanty row one last time. So slip stitch, single crochet, half double crochet and double crochet. That's the last slanty row that we are going to do. Now we're going to do our double crochet section. Now we're back at the end, we chain up 1, turn our work, and we're just going to do 1 lot of 3 chains and a single crochet before we turn around and do another lot of double crochets. Once you've finished those 3 double crochets, we're going to do our chain ups, turn our work and do our single crochet, and then turn around again and do 1 last lot of 3 double crochets. And now that's the end of our neck or arm portion, whichever you prefer to call it. So you can see there, you should have 9 lots of double crochets going all the way up from the bottom of the armpit to the top of the shoulder. Now we get to do that all over again, but in reverse. So you're going to need to make a slip knot to start our work, and this time we're going to be starting in the middle to make sure that our double crochet rows are all facing the same direction. So insert into that stitch, put it through your loop, pull through and chain 1. Now we're going to be doing our rows of 3 chains and a single crochet. So turn your work around and continue on the rest of this row like normal. Once you finish this row, we're going to need to chain up 3, turn our work like normal, and do our double crochets until we reach that last gap. Now that we've reached our last gap, we're going to need to do a slanty row, so double crochet, half double crochet, single crochet and slip stitch. Now, because of the side that we're on, we're going to need to go back to doing our 3 slip stitches into the stitch. So turn your work and do a slip stitch into each of the decreased slanty row stitches. Now you're just going to keep going with our normal chain and single crochet rows. So this is basically the same as the armpit portion and the other side of the neckline, you're just doing it in reverse. So now just keep going until both sides of the neckline look the same. Now we're moving into the back panel, so you'll just repeat everything that we did before minus the neckline, but when you get up to this bit, instead of having the 4 double crochet rows, we're going to have 7 double crochet rows above the armpit. Now we're going to do basically the same thing that we did for the front, but it's going to be a bit of a smaller gap. So we're just going to go across 3 of the double crochet groups. So after you've done 3, we're going to turn back around straight away and we're going to do our decreased slanty row. So we're going to slip stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, and then double crochet. Now in the next 2 gaps we're going to do our 4 double crochets like normal. I'm sure you get the idea by now, because this is practically the same as the front neck panel section, it's just a slightly different combination. So I'm just going to let the rest play out so you can see how it's done, but if you want more detailed explanations, just go back to that front panel neckline section. But obviously, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments and I will get back to you as soon as I can. now you can see here what the back panel is supposed to look like, and you're just going to need to do the same thing on the other side like we did for the front panel neckline. You can see here the difference between the front panel and the back panel. Now we're going to need to stitch our front panel and our back panel together. So you'll need to stitch it at each shoulder and also along the sides under the arms. I use a tapestry needle for this, but if you don't have one of those, you can just use your hook, but use whatever you have on hand. Once it's all stitched up, we're going to need to start working on our trim. So I'm starting with the arm portions first. You're also going to want to make sure that it's in the right way, so it shouldn't be inside out when you start the trim portion. So we're going to need to make a slip knot and insert your hook into that underarm section. You might have to sort of force it through and make a bit of a hole, but if you just insert it into the middle where you stitched it up and then join on there, that'd be about the right spot. Then chain up one. Now we're going to need to chain up 3, and we're going to go back to our 3 chains 1 single crochet pattern. So now you're going to need to do a single crochet into the gap. For some of these stitches it'll be really easy to find the gap, and for some it'll be a bit harder. So just do your best to work out where it should go and try to make it even on both sides. So you're just going to continue doing 3 chains and 1 single crochet all the way around the armpit. Once you've made it all the way around, we're going to do our last 3 chains and then do a single crochet into the stitch where we started this row from. Now we're going to need to chain up 3, and we're going to go back to doing our double crochets, but this time we're going to only do 3 double crochets into each of the gaps for all of the gaps that are next to a slanty stitch. So you can see here the next 4 stitches are going to be slanty rows, so we're just going to do 3 double crochets into the next 4 gaps. So it should be 5 in total if you're counting from where you started. And then after that, we're going to go back to doing 4 double crochet into every gap. So now you can see that this lot of double crochets is going into a gap that's not next to a slanty row, so we're going to do 4, and we're going to continue doing 4 all the way around until we get to the other armpit, and then we're going to go back to doing 3 double crochets into the last 5 gaps. So now we are up to the last one, and we're going to do 3 double crochets into that last gap, and then slip stitch with that first lot of 3 chains to finish this row. So now once you've finished that row, we're going to chain up 3 and we're going to start on the next row. For this row, we're going to start by doing double crochets into each stitch, but we're going to skip that first one and go into the top of the second double crochet, and we're going to do a double crochet into every stitch, going up till we get to the bottom of the decreased armpit section. So for all of the sections that have 3 double crochets in a row, you're going to do 1 double crochet into each of those stitches. Once you get up to the last lot of 3 double crochets, we're going to start stitching 2 together so that we can make an angle for our armpit. So I'm just doing my last double crochet. So now I'm going to stitch 2 together by doing to do this, you're going to yarn over, insert your hook into the next stitch, pull through, and then insert straight into that next stitch. Yarn over, pull through 3, and then pull through 2. So we're going to do that again. Our stitch 2 together double crochets, and you should do 4 in a row in total. Now that we've done 4 stitch 2 together double crochets, we're going to start the pattern of 2 double crochets and then 1 stitch together double crochet. So it should be double crochet, stitch 2 together, double crochet, stitch 2 together. And now just do this going all the way around until you get to the other armpit. Now that we are almost at our other armpit, we're going to do our stitch 2 together double crochets. Because in the pattern I just finished doing one, I'm only going to have to do 3 more, but there should be 4 in total, spanning across that last lot of 4 double crochets into that first lot of 3 double crochets. So just do what we did on the other side and do 4 stitch together double crochets, and then we're going to continue on that last little bit of the row with doing 1 double crochet into every stitch going along until you get back to the start. Once you've reached the end, we're going to do our last double crochet, and then we're going to do a slip stitch into that first chain where we started. Remember to skip the last stitch like we did on the other side when we started. So now you can pull through and cut your yarn, and that's the finished armhole. So you're going to need to do the exact same thing on the other armhole, but it should be entirely symmetrical to the one that we just did. Now we're going to start on the neck trim. So you'll need to start from the back. I've marked the middle of the back, but you can easily just count. If you don't have stitch markers, it's not that important. So I'm going to do what we've done with the arm and make a slip knot and join the yarn on to the middle of the back. And then I'm going to do a chain up of 1. And now we're going to do the stitch that we've done many times already and do our 3 chains and our 1 single crochet into the gap. You're just going to do this going all the way around the neck. It might be a little bit difficult to get it into that section that is where we stitched up between the back panel and the front panel, but just find a hole as close as you can to the middle. So just keep doing this all the way around until you get back to the start. Once you've made it back to the start, we're going to do that last stitch and make sure you put it through the same hole that you started off with. And then we're going to chain up 3. This is going to be a bit easier than the armhole because it's going to be the same going all the way around, but you're going to do 3 double crochets into each of the gaps. So no matter where you are in the circle going around the neck, you're just going to do 3 double crochets into every stitch going all the way around. Now that we've made it back to the start, we're going to do our last lot of double crochets going into that last gap, and then we're going to slip stitch into that first lot of chains that we did. Once you've done the slip stitch, we're going to chain up 3. And now this is going to be easier than the armhole too because it's also going to be consistent going all the way around. But after you've chained up 3, we're going to do 2 double crochets. So double crochet into that first stitch, double crochet into the second stitch, and then we're going to stitch the next 2 stitches together. So it is a bit the same as the armhole in that it's the same pattern, double crochet, stitch 2 together. And you're just going to go all the way around until you get back to the start. Now that we're at the end, we're just going to do our last stitch, and we're actually not going to join up this time because you want to be able to make sure you can get it over your head. So we're going to leave this open, and I'm going to sew on a button to make sure that I'm able to get my head through the hole. If you've made your neckline bigger than this, then you don't need to leave this gap and you don't need to put a button on, but for me I needed to, otherwise I couldn't get my head through the hole. Our last step is doing the trim at the bottom. So for this we're going to join on like we did for the armhole and the neck hole, but it's going to be way easier because we already have that first row done, the 3 chains and a single crochet, because that's what we did at the very start. So we get to go straight into our groups of 4 double crochet. Once you've joined on the yarn, starting on whichever side of the body you'd like to start, you're just going to chain up 3, and then we're going to do 3 double crochets into that first gap. After that we're going to do 4 double crochets into every gap going all the way around until we get back to the start, just like we used to do in the first few rows. once you get back to the start, we're going to do our last lot of 4 double crochets into the gap, and then we're going to join on to the first stitch in the row. So we're going to slip stitch to join, and then we're going to do our 3 chains as usual, and then we're going to do 1 double crochet into every stitch going all the way around. So you see you can skip that first gap because we've already got our 3 chains on top of our other 3 chain posts. So you're just going to go into that next stitch and do a double crochet, and then do 1 double crochet in every stitch going all the way around until you get back to the start. Now that we've made it back to the start, we're going to do our last couple of double crochets, and then we're going to join on. So last double crochet there, and then we're going to do a slip stitch to join, chain up 1, and then you can cut. Now the very last thing I need to do is sew a button onto the back of the neck. I would have preferred to use a white button or a clear button, but I didn't have any, and we're in lockdown right now, so I didn't want to order just one button online, so I decided to use a black one, but I'd probably recommend using a different colour. So you're just going to attach the button onto the back so that we can do up the back of the neck. And that's it. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments and I'll make sure I get back to you.